Hello and good evening. Welcome. This is Qtv News and I am Umudu Kajiga and you are joining us live from our studios along Caraba Avenue. Thank you for joining us. Here first our main local, international and sports news headlines. 1 year after the declaration of coronavirus as a pandemic, we speak to a scientist involved about concerns over the speed in coming with a vaccine. Having a well-trained Navy is important. In line with this, 21 commanders and junior officers have completed 8-week intensive training for platoon commanders. Still on some of the stories that we have, the TRRC has had from paramilitary officers and the Deputy Director of Park and Wildlife in relation to the 2005 slaughter of West African migrants in the Gambia. In international news, Niger's President Mahamadou Issoufou has won the $5 million 2020 Mo Ibrahim Prize for his exemplary leadership skills. The UK agrees to return £4 million of stolen loot to Nigeria, but what are African countries doing to return money stolen by kleptocrats? In sports news, and we are going to talk about football, the African Under-17 tournament scheduled to start in Morocco has been cancelled. The organizers blamed COVID constraints. Those were the main news headlines, and now the news in detail. Welcome if you're just joining us. This is Qtv News and I am Umudu Gajaga. First, we talk about the COVID-19. It is exactly 1 year since the WHO declared the coronavirus a global pandemic, leading to emergency measures in most countries to contain the spread of the disease. As efforts to tackle the virus gain momentum, with more than 326 million people inoculated worldwide in at least 121 countries, what has surprised many is the record time it took scientists to develop these vaccines. Our reporter Mahmoud Lamin Choi has been finding out more about the disease.
On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic for a virus that struck the world, spreading like wildfire in a dry season, with scientists knowing little or nothing about it. So far, globally, over 100 million people have been infected, of which 2.6 million have lost their lives. In less than a week this month, Gambia will mark 1 year since the virus entered the country. A deadly and highly transmissible virus without any cure has pushed scientists to act and develop a vaccine in less than a year. A stunning historic achievement that has left many worried about safety and efficacy of the vaccines. Dr. Mustafa Abitei, one of the scientists who developed the AstraZeneca vaccine, which the Gambia is currently rolling out, helps answer the questions about the record time development of the vaccine.
This is not something that we have done by cutting corners or compromising certain aspect when it comes to safety and other things. No. I mean, every safety aspect has been followed. The trials have gone through rigorous processes, and these have been monitored from every stage up till the end.
Scientists at the Jenner Institute of Oxford University have put out a message saying work towards tackling pandemics had started years ago after epidemics hit the world, infected and killed hundreds of thousands. Given this, the scientists described it as the biggest public misconception that work on vaccines only started when the pandemic began.
We have what we call disease X, so the expert in the field will know this, that disease X could be anything, and it happens to be the current pandemic-causing virus. So preparation has always been in place to prepare for disease X in case it arises. How do we deal with it? How do we adapt the technology? How do we fine-tune the technology we have in vaccine development to make sure, we can deploy that as quick as possible?
Another lever for the development of the vaccine is the advance of and use of technology in the process as opposed to the slow, conventional process of vaccine development. The scientists call it a style of plug-and-play technology because at the Oxford lab, researchers took a common cold virus that infected chimpanzees and engineered it to become the building block of a vaccine against anything.
The modern way of producing vaccines is what I would call high-tech vaccines, because they don't need you to, handle the virus or take anything from the virus. We have advanced in our knowledge, so much so that now we know if you take a genetic code and send that code into the body, you can instruct the body to produce something that you are interested in, and that's what we did.
Had there not been a global pandemic, it could take many years for the world to reach a scientific breakthrough in the absence of the huge amounts of funding that individual countries and organizations quickly pumped in for scientists to spend on vaccine development. Also, ironically, this virus has given the scientists what is described as a lucky break, which they have cashed in on to get this far.
We've been studying coronaviruses for so many years, so we know a little bit about coronaviruses. If this virus happens to be a completely different virus, from a novel family that we have no knowledge about, we wouldn't have been now talking about developing vaccines now for this virus. By now, we will be trying to understand how this virus behaves.
What is also historic for the scientists is the mass participation of volunteers in the trials of vaccines and the joint effort of regulators with researchers to make vaccines available and get us out of the pandemic by preventing further infections and loss of lives. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, Qtv News.
Mahmoud Lamin Choi reporting there. Given the importance of the nation's marine resources, having a well-trained Navy is important. In line with this, Navy Commander Commodore Madani Sangor presided over the graduation of 21 commanders and junior officers on Wednesday after 8 weeks intensive training for platoon commanders. Our reporter Ansumana Esonyasi attended the ceremony and he now reports.
This ceremony marks the end of 8 weeks intensive training for these officers who trained on basic command responsibility and civil-military relations. They are now equipped to serve as platoon commanders. On behalf of the CDS, Navy Commander Commodore Madani Sangor commended the officers for their commitment and professionalism throughout the course and went on to emphasize GAV Command's commitment to building the capacities of members of the armed forces.
It's a way of life, and in general, in the military, at large, it's a way of life. You need to be able to inspire others in the way you behave, in the people you associate with, and the things you do.
Major Ambrose Da Costa, commandant at the Army Training School, highlighted the importance of capacity building, saying training is an important activity that should be embraced by all, and went on to enjoin the graduates to judiciously use the experience gained from the training in the discharge of their functions.
I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate you all for successfully completing this course. However, permit me to submit to you that ranks does not confer privilege or give power. It imposes responsibility. Therefore, as leaders, I encourage you to be committed to your responsibility with all forms of honesty, as these will go a long way in inspiring your subordinates.
On behalf of the graduates, Cadet Officer Lamin S. Marong expressed gratitude to the GAV Command for what he described as a career-changing opportunity that will have a lifetime impact on their work.
To the GAV High Command, we say thank you to your visionary and wise captainship. The sail was rough, but you steadied it for us, especially the young one coming up. The CDS training program is designed such that it met the criteria of modern-day armed forces operations and equally enhanced officers and soldiers' military capacity in promoting professionalism within the Gambia Armed Forces.
Cadet officers Ibrahim Agay and Mohamed Mane were awarded certificates of merit as the first and second outstanding students, while Lieutenant Abi Sise was also recognized for her FIFA Referee Badge Award. Lieutenant Sise gained her first FIFA Referee's Badge in 2012 and has recently officiated at CAF and WAFU Women's International and in the JFF League in Gambia. Ansumane Sonyasi for Qtv News.
Next story about the TRRC. 2 paramilitary officers stationed at the PIU post in Ghana Town in 2005 Thursday narrated the truth to the Truth Commission about the dead bodies they saw in the forest of Tangier Bird Reserve in connection with the massacre of West African migrants in 2005. Babukar C reports.
The 2 police officers, Kalilu Jallo and Olisam, were stationed at Burfoot PIU post in Ghana Town and vividly recalled the 23rd of July 2005 when an old man on a bicycle came to their office to report that he saw dead bodies in the forest. According to the 2, they both went to the forest to see for themselves what the man was talking about. Olisam said she was terrified when she entered the bush and started seeing the dead bodies.
We found
a dead body lying on the ground. We walked for a short distance forward.
ñu gis yeneen tam ñu ngi tëdda yeneen bodies yi ñu ngi tëdda.
And we saw other bodies lying down.
Nata fure dolu fana li jelari nje.
After sila dagal.
That was when I got scared.
Tumolon te fanan silata.
Ma dem taxaw ci kaw tali bi.
I went and stood by the highway.
For Kalilu Jallow, this was what he saw.
Abe larin dumale akungo be tearing.
He was lying on the ground and his head was broken.
Mu ngi teddoon ci suuf bopp baa ngi toj.
Kala kunkengo fongo jeno afintita.
You can see the brains was coming out.
Kalilu said they later went back to report to their bosses, who asked them to return to the scene and protect the area before the arrival of their seniors. When they returned to the scene, another 5 bodies were discovered, with all almost in the same condition. The witnesses said they spent hours with the dead bodies before the arrival of their seniors. The following day after the discovery of the bodies, the witnesses said they were given orders to bury the bodies inside the forest as they had started decomposing. The witnesses said their relief commander told them this.
Relief commander bi dafa ñu waxoon ne ñu def ko secret ñun kese bu ko kenn yëg.
Our relief commander told us that we should keep this a secret and this information should only remain within those of us who were there.
Na fanna nyaton ko le nata akonyen ko nga nyin ko ke alkunoto ti nga mabo nga ndede la fe nkana fu moy.
Khalil
ita dum?
Ade.
Yes.
Well, yes, what? I mean for
what she said is what happened.
On the 2 Ghanaians that escaped and ran to the village and were later escorted to the police, the witnesses said they were shocked after discovering another body in the forest a day after handing over those people to some security officers the night before. Babukar C, Qtv News.
From that report, we are going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, some more local, international, and sports news headlines. Do stay tuned. If you're just joining us, this is QTV and you're watching us live from our studios along Caraba Avenue. And now to our next story. The Deputy Director of Parks and Wildlife on Wednesday told the Truth Commission that they were threatened by state authorities not to discuss the dead bodies of Ghanaian migrants found in Brufut Forest in 2005. Abubakar C, who has been at the TRRC listening to the proceedings, and he now reports.
The witness told the Truth Commission that he was posted at Tanjay Bath Sanctuary at the time when some people fetching firewood in the forest told them they saw a dead body in the forest. Rushing to the scene, the witness said they were horrified by what they found.
They were just wearing trousers, but they were not wearing any shirts. When we went on to search more, they were bleeding from the mouth and their noses.
Usainu Toure said they found 7 bodies and later called the PIU, who came with a pickup truck and evacuated the bodies. He added that one of the staff of Parks and Wildlife was part of the panel set up to investigate the matter. After 4 months, the staff member was told not to attend sittings and warned to keep matters secret.
For them, boy, new information on the time, civilian among the group, so.
And they later told them that we were the only civilians in the group. And if this information is leaked, then they will know that it is us.
So, did that convey to you the message that government was covering up?
Yes, we knew that from the beginning of the whole thing.
Toure said the Parks and Wildlife staff told him that the bodies found in the forest are West African migrants and that most of them were Ghanaians. Babukar C, Qtv News.
The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education is implementing a 5-year project on access to quality, comprehensive health education for selected public and private schools in Region 1. Loli M. Kamara reports.
The study is to understand the underlying factors that affect the implementation of comprehensive health education for adolescents in and out of school. Observations indicated that youths lack access to quality information and services on preventing and protecting themselves against sexual and reproductive health infections and unwanted pregnancies. Fabiana Aina Grant Sanyang, the principal investigator, outlined some of the key factors highlighted during their survey of schools.
This research is implementation research project that is for 5 years, and the first year is research, the second year is implementation, and the third year is another research, then the fourth year is also an implementation. So from there, from the in-schools, we also created a community-based committee, because this project is not only for in-schools but also for out of school, because my focus is not just for schools, school-going adolescent, but also for out of school. You have the dropouts, you have the madrasas, that's non-conventional schools, you have some people, they were not fortunate even to go to schools. You have some people, they are at the age of 15 to 19 and they are house help. They all participated in this project.
Fatou Bite from the Curriculum Directorate reminded the school principals from Region 1 that they should endeavor to share key research messages with the students. Adding that for the past few years, students have shown no interest in learning family life education in schools.
We decided to say, instead of having it as a stand-alone subject, which we used to have with the population and family life education, what do we do so that we will help our own children? We sit back and say, why not we integrate it into the subjects that are related to CHE? That's why in the new curriculum revision that we are doing, we take all these issues of comprehensive health education and integrate it into all these subject areas that are related to this subject.
Malandi Mbalo, acting principal at Ndau's Comprehensive Upper Basic, and Hannah Kipikoka, the principal of St. Joseph Senior Secondary School, both said the project is timely and will go a long way towards impacting on the lives of the intended target group.
Students, will feel even shy even to take part in a lesson like that. And some teachers who were not also well grounded would find it also difficult to be delivering lessons in such areas. So as a result, it was dying down, but with the initiative that the organizers have taken from the community level and everybody being involved, I hope after this it will be easy.
Such a project to come in at this time is very much timely. In our situation at school, we see a lot of instances where we have to talk to girls, and it's mostly when they have problems.
The survey was conducted in 43 schools, the majority of which are public schools. The project will also focus on educational and informational activities to empower children and adolescents to respond to their sexual health care needs. For Qtv News, Lolly M. Camara.
And now, unless you live outside the urban areas, this story is going to hit you hard. Traffic congestion in urban Gambia is a nightmare for motorists, passengers and pedestrians, especially during rush hour. As Omar P. Jallo reports, vehicles parked along roadsides are also a contributing factor, according to the story. More in this report.
The issue of traffic jam in urban Gambia is compounded by numerous factors, ranging from the narrow roads, the number of vehicles, illegal parking of vehicles along our roads, heaps of gravels and sand at building sites, peeling out on the roads, and the negative attitudes of some selfish drivers. Ali Loom, a mechanic, and Sekou Choi, a commercial driver, believe traffic jams are sometimes caused by all and private cars parked along the highways, occupying a significant chunk of the road space. In addition, the practice of commercial vehicle drivers stopping randomly at spots that are not designated or appropriate as pick-up points for passengers. Loom want traffic police to do more. Unless these factors are addressed, the country will continue to have traffic jams, resulting in unnecessary delays. Most of these traffic violations happen in the presence of traffic police, and most private drivers cause serious traffic disruptions and get away with it.
dañoo war a am on place boo xam ne dañ leen fa daa teg ak private yi nii comme ñu dee wàcce si tali bi rek gars yi paak ko noonu dem si soppi yi nii bàyyi ko noonu loolu tam daf di overhatal.
Our roads are very narrow, and the number of vehicles are increasing. Therefore, designated bus stops at specific places should be mapped out to ensure free flow of traffic. We are appealing to the government to find alternative routes to fix the problem. Aissatou Dabo and Mariama Cham are commuters. They put the blame on our narrow roads and the increased number of vehicles now on our roads. As commercial drivers don't want to have to negotiate traffic build-ups, this leads them to only take short trips.
Some drivers, instead of charging passengers direct fare to Brikama, they charge from Banjul to Westfield, then to Latrikunda, Tabokoto, Lamen, Farato, and then to Brikama. Under normal circumstances, these non-ending stops should be charged as one fare. This act is terrible considering the monthly wages of the Gambian civil servants.
So they contribute, why tali tamit bokanensi. Tali hanga suñu yaatu won yenen façon yaatu ñu defar comme part bi nga xamne driver yu nga xamne dañ pan or something fofu la ñoo mëna taxaw.
Can you imagine one leaving his or her workplace to return home only to reach at night? And in some cases, you find your children asleep. It is high time the government and concerned agencies try to find alternative routes to fix the country's traffic jams.
The Gambia needs more feeder roads and major routes linking major towns to make traffic flow easier. For example, there should be an additional major road linking Sting Corner or Westfield and Tabokoto or Abuko. Another one should be created to complement the Coastal Road intersection, which is also becoming a busy route, especially after closing hours. However, it is a clear fact that any major expansion will also come at a cost. Unless a major expansion is carried out, commuters in urban areas will continue to encounter daily traffic jams. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar P. Jallo.
From that story about traffic congestion, we will take our second commercial break but still to come, we'll bring you some international and sports news. Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is QTV, and we thank you so much for staying tuned. And next is international news. Niger's President Mahamadou Issoufou has won the 2020 Mo Ibrahim $5 million prize. The president, who steps down next month, having served his two-term limit, was praised by the prize committee for his leadership after inheriting one of the world's poorest economies. And here is the report.
The Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership is an annual prize awarded to a former African executive head of state or government on criteria of good governance, democratic election, and respect of term limits. On 8 of the 14 years it has been offered, no leader has been found worthy of the award. To win the $5 million prize attached to it, one has to leave office. Gambian diplomat and economist Abdoulaye Jane, former executive secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, is an executive director of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Few prizes are as prestigious or as seldom awarded. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia was the last recipient in 2017. In giving the 2020 award to Issoufou, the prize committee cited his progress in reducing poverty and spurring economic growth over his 10 years in power. The share of Nigerians living in extreme poverty fell from about 48% to about 40%. And although the country is ranked as the world's poorest on a range of measures by the UN Development Programme, under Issoufou, it has got more children into school and improved life expectancy. The prize committee praised Issoufou, saying he has championed African democracy and respect for constitutional rule in Niger and across the continent. To many observers, Issoufou's main achievement may simply have been his decision to leave office, effecting Niger's first ever democratic transition of power. That alone, they say, is worth cheering in a country that has seen 4 successful coups since its independence in 1960. They point out that if the 68-year-old wanted to remain in power, he could have copied other presidents much older than he is across West Africa who managed to get the constitution changed so they could extend their time in office. But his convictions would not let him do so, he told the BBC before last month's elections. I respect the constitution. I respect the promise I made to the people of Niger, who have given me the honor of leading them for 2 terms, he said. His progress is all the more impressive in a country that is caught between 2 jihadist insurgencies, one in Mali to its west and another on its southeastern border with Nigeria. In the BBC interview, he said, "If I have any regrets, it is that we are unfortunately still victims of terrorist attacks. The task of dealing with the security problems now falls on his hand-picked successor, Mohamed Bazoum, who won February's election." Issoufou's longer-term legacy will take some time to unfold. For now, he joins an exclusive club of African statesmen and women who have been hailed as leading their people on a path of progress. Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique won it in 2007, Festus Mogai of Botswana in 2008, Pedros Pires of Cape Verde in 2011, Hifikepunye Pohamba of Namibia in 2014, and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia 2017. This exclusivity, however, is also a measure of how few true leadership exists on the continent. For QTV News, I am Mamadou Mbouch.
The UK government has promised to return to Nigeria money stolen by James Ibori, a former governor of one of Nigeria's oil-producing states. This is the first time that money recovered from criminals will be returned to Nigeria from the UK since an agreement was signed in 2016 between the 2 countries. But what are the other African countries themselves doing to curb stage grab? Mamadou Mbouch again.
The UK and Nigerian governments signed an agreement on Tuesday for the £4.2 million recovered by the UK agencies to be sent back to Nigeria for infrastructure projects, including the Lagos to Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja to Kano Road, and the Second Niger Bridge. The story of how James Ibori went from convicted thief in London in the 1990s to become governor of Delta State, a wealthy oil-producing state, and then to a British prison has been much remarked on by close observers of Nigerian politics. In 1991, Ibori was convicted in the UK for stealing from a DIY store where his wife worked as a cashier. In 1992, he was again found guilty of being in possession of a stolen credit card and having used it to fraudulently withdraw money. But remarkably, a year later, Ibori was back in Nigeria in a new reincarnation as a political operator. Military leader Ibrahim Babangida had scheduled elections to return Nigeria to democracy in June 1993. Ibori worked for the governorship campaign of a friend, and through the experience, he made good connections and over the ensuing years maneuvered his way through the political maze, offering alliances for hire, and eventually lied his way to the governorship of Delta State in 1999. He had lied about his date of birth and his criminal conviction, which would have prevented him standing for office. He was governor until 2007, and throughout his governorship, he shifted alliances according to who was in power. First, he offered his services, which many saw as murky, to Abacha. Then when that president died in 1998, he switched horses to the influential northern politician Atiku Abubakar, who went on to become vice president. From there, he again shifted to the then president Olusegun Obasanjo, and with the arrival of Yaradua, he again switched, and it is claimed that he bankrolled the 2007 Yaradua election campaign, although this has been denied. In 2012, Ibori was convicted in a UK court on 10 counts of fraud worth a total of nearly £50 million and jailed for 13 years. One of the counts Ibori admitted at the trial related to a $37 million fraud pertaining to the sale of Delta State share in Nigerian privatized phone company V-Mobile. Soon after he became governor in 1999, he paid off in cash the mortgage on a house in a swanky part of London and went on to buy 3 other properties in the UK, paying more than £2 million in cash for one of them. In 2020, prosecutors in the UK court asked a judge to make a confiscation order of nearly £118 million against Ibori. The amount in the Ibori case pales in comparison with returns to Nigeria from other countries, especially linked to former President Sani Abacha. In 2006, $723 million illicitly acquired by Abacha's family was returned to Nigeria from Switzerland. In February of last year, the United States and the British dependency of Jersey agreed with Nigeria to repatriate more than $300 million in funds stolen by former military ruler Sani Abacha. When Ibori was jailed in 2012, one analyst mused that had former President Yaradua lived, Ibori stood a good chance of becoming his vice president, which would have given him a clear run to become president. Then he continued, Mr. Ibori would have met Queen Elizabeth at the State House instead of serving at her pleasure. The unbridled corruption is unmistakably the effect of dysfunctional politics. For Qtv News, I am Mamadou Mbouch.
From that story, we would go to sports news. The 14th edition of the African Youth Championship, scheduled to commence next Saturday, has been cancelled. The CAF Emergency Committee announced on Monday. Aliou Cisse has the details.
At an emergency meeting last Monday in Rabat, Morocco, the committee attributed the last-minute decision to the constraints faced by some of the participating countries, as well as the host country, including the fact that the coronavirus pandemic contributes to present significant challenges for the organization of international sporting events. Taking into account the cancellation by FIFA of the Under-20 World Cup and Under-17 Cups, for which their respective AFCON tournaments were no longer qualifying, the committee further noted the resurgence of the pandemic, increased restriction on international travel, and uncertainty about the evolution of the situation. The tournament was due to start this week in Morocco. 4 countries, including Uganda, Zambia, Senegal, and Ivory Coast, had already arrived in Morocco in preparation for the final tournament due to take place from 13th to the 31st of March. Other countries that were to take part are Cameroon, South Africa, Mali, Algeria, Congo-Brazzaville, Nigeria, and Tanzania. Last week, authorities in Morocco suspended all flights to and from several countries as part of efforts to stop the COVID-19. Reports indicate CAF had reached out to Tanzania to serve as emergency host for the championship before the cancellation. The East African nation hosted the previous edition in 2018 and is one of the few countries that have allowed football activities, including allowing fans into stadia, to move on normally. Tanzania's president had declared his country the only one not to have any COVID-19 cases. However, he is now being treated in neighboring Kenya. The news of the cancellation has solely come as a major disappointment to these youngsters and to the expectant audiences across the continent. Reporting for Qtv News, I am Aliou Cisse.
Before we end this bulletin of the news, now let's have a quick look at our main news stories. 1 year after the WHO declared coronavirus a pandemic, we spoke to a scientist involved about concerns over the speed in coming with a vaccine. Having a well-trained Navy is important, and in line with this, 21 commanders and junior officers have completed 8 weeks intensive training for platoon commanders. The TRRC heard from paramilitaries and the deputy directors of Park and Wildlife in relation to the 2005 slaughter of West African migrants in the Gambia. In international news, Niger's President Mahamadou Issoufou has won the $5 million 2020 Mo Ibrahim Prize for his exemplary leadership skills. The UK agrees to return £4 million of stolen loot to Nigeria. But the question is, what are African countries doing to return money stolen by kleptocrats? In sports news, and in football to be precise, the AFCON Under-17 tournament scheduled to start in Morocco on Saturday has been cancelled. Organizers blamed COVID constraints. That's all we have for you in tonight's news edition, and thank you for keeping us company. Have a pleasant night, and until we come your way tomorrow, bye.